Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Rob Trout and I'm Chair of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. Welcome to this remote meeting taking place on the 17th of December 2020, which is being recorded live to the Council's website and will be available to view for a minimum of 6 months. Please be aware that any footage from the media can be used in subsequent media broadcasts. I would like to give a warm welcome to members, officers and any members of the public or media who are watching this live feed of the meeting. Before I commence with the formal business on the agenda, I'd like to cover some of the housekeeping issues for us all to follow. All participants must mute their microphone. To speak, please use the chat function on the right-hand side. Type RTS, which stands for Request to Speak. And please remember, everyone in the meeting can see the messages in the chat function. When invited to speak, please remember to unmute your microphone. And once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless you've already introduced yourself earlier in the meeting. If you're having issues with connectivity, try switching off your video and use just the telephone function. If connectivity issues continue, you may have to leave the meeting and then rejoin to get a better signal. If I lose my connection, my Vice Chair, Councillor Alison Beattie, will take over until my connection is restored. Okay, we'll go straight into the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies, Ian?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Jopling, Martin, Smith and Tinsley.
Thank you, Ian. Item 2, substitute members. Do we have any substitutes, Ian?
Yes, we have Councillor Ormerod as substitute member for Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Ian. Item 3 is minutes of the last meeting held on the 29th of October 2020. Can we agree the minutes is a correct record? Moving, Chair.
Great, Chair.
Agreed.
Right, thank you. Are there any matters arising?
Chair, Jenny Howarth, Head of Strategy. There's only one matter arising, which was page 8 at paragraph 6. There was a query from Councillor Hopgood on inclusion of appraisals data in future reports. A response was provided to all members of the committee via email, and there's an opportunity for any follow-up linked to item 7 on this agenda, the Q2 performance report. We'll also have Alison Lazazera, the Head of People and Talent Management, in attendance for that item, Chair.
Thanks for that, Jenny. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations this morning? No, thank you. That'll take us to item 5, which is the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, Annual Review of the Council's Use of Powers 2019-20. And we have, as usual, Camilla Coulson-Patel to present the report. Over to you, Camilla.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Camilla Coulson-Patel, the Governance Solicitor at Durham County Council, and I'm pleased to present this annual review report in respect of the activities for the Council for 2019-2020, which is shown at pages 13 to 20 of your reports pack. This report provides an overview of the Council's use of its powers under RIPA for April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020, as well as an update on the review of the corporate guidance and the training delivered in this period. Members will see from the report at paragraph 7 within the table, for this period there were 3 authorisations for directed surveillance and 3 for chase. This is a slight reduction of 1 from the previous year. I will now go on to outline the operations and outcomes for this period. Firstly, in Q2, there was an authorisation for directed surveillance which related to test purchases of underage sales of alcohol from licensed premises in County Durham. During the operation, 10 premises were visited. Of those, 7 premises made underage sales. On retesting, 5 of the 7 premises failed the test purchases by making underage sales once again. Of those 5 premises, they were referred for a review of the licence, which resulted in variations on their licensing conditions, as well as fixed penalty notice being issued by the police to the sellers. In Q3, There were 2 authorisations for directed surveillance, again relating to the underage sale of alcohol from licensed premises. These operations highlighted that a member of staff at each premise was failing to check the age or ID of the volunteer. The outcome of this was that a fixed penalty notice was issued by the police, and the council provided advice to the business owners in respect of underage sales and the prevention of future underage sales. In Q3, there was an authorisation for a CHIS, which involved the monitoring of a Facebook profile in relation to the sale and supply of counterfeit goods. As part of the operation, the officer arranged to purchase a pair of Nike trainers, which were later confirmed to be counterfeit. A warrant was subsequently issued and executed in December 2019, and as part of this, a quantity of counterfeit goods was seized from the property. In October 2020, 2 defendants pleaded guilty to supplying counterfeit items. Defendant 1 was ordered to pay a total of £402 and defendant 2 was ordered to pay £731.85. For members' information, there was in Q3, there was an authorisation granted for a CHIS which related to the sale of faulty vehicles. However, this authorisation was cancelled without any surveillance taking place, as the partner agency could not support the council to fulfil the surveillance. Moving on, members will be aware that there is a RIPA officers group, and in 2019-2020, the group continued to meet with a defined work programme and schedule, including the review of the corporate guidance, in-house practices and training to officers. There was some disruption to the meeting schedule of the group in Q4 due to COVID restrictions on meetings. However, I'm pleased to report that the meetings have since been reinstated with a full plan of meetings to take place in 2020-2021. In respect of training, the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office places a high value on training. On the 6th of March 2020, training was delivered from an external specialist to 16 key officers in the council. Additional training was planned to take place in September 2020, however this has been pushed back into 2020-2021 following the restrictions on the delivery of face-to-face training. In addition to the external training, in-house training and awareness sessions have been delivered by myself as the RIPA monitoring officer. Finally, as members are aware, at each annual review, the corporate guidance in respect of RIPA is reviewed and an update is presented to this committee. Members will recall an extensive review took place in 2018-2019, and in view of there being no significant changes to the legislation or guidance issued by the government, this review has been a smaller exercise. A summary of the changes are best described as follows. Firstly, there has been an update to the retention period throughout the document to ensure consistency. This has been set at 3 years from the date of cancellation of the authorisation for the documentation to be held on the central register. The guidance has been updated to include interactive links to policies and legislation. That's hoped that it will be a more interactive document for officers to be able to access. Also, a flowchart has been produced to simplify the process on an initial glance. The guidance has been updated to ensure that it is produced in an accessible format in accordance with the accessibility regulations which came into force earlier this year. Also, there has been a change which reflects the change in our working arrangements. The practice has been reviewed and amended to now allow for the electronic submission of authorisations, which are held on an electronic register held by the Senior Responsible Officer, which is the Head of Legal and Democratic Services Helen Lynch. The procedure for approval has been revisited and clarified to confirm that the investigating officer or applicant now presents the application for authorisation to the monitoring officer, RIPA monitoring officer that is, who then allocates the application to one authorising officer within the council. This is hoped that it will ensure that other officers will have the opportunity to review authorisations which are going through in respect of this work. Chair, the recommendations are set out at paragraph 5 of the report, and members are asked to receive the annual report on the Council's use of powers under RIPA and to note that the RIPA corporate guidance has been updated to reflect any changes to current legislation and best practice. That's the report, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Thanks for that detailed annual report and update, Camilla. We'll go over to members now for questions or comments. I've got Councillor Mark Wilkes first. Mark.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. I'd just like to refer members to paragraph 11, page 14, where the officer is referred to the alcohol sales, where we went to 10 premises, 7 were failed underage sale tests, and then on retesting, 5 of the 7 failed again. And then there was a review of the licence. What it doesn't say, and what we haven't had in the last few years, is any confirmation at any point of any licence ever being withdrawn from any premises. And it is a little bit of a concern of mine that where you've got 70% of those places visited failing, and then 50% failing on a second visit, it strikes me that the powers we appear to have are not strong enough. Because if we're not actually, if there's no publicity out there to say we are going to take your licence away, then all they'll do is just assume that there'll be a review, they'll get a slap on the hand, and then a few weeks later, or even without any gap, they'll be selling alcohol again. And I think I brought this up at a previous meeting last year as well. How many premises have had their licences withdrawn after repeated offences?
We have a response to that, Camilla. I know we're straying into regulatory committee business here, but I don't know if you have any information on what Mark's talking about.
No, thank you, Councillor Wilkes. That's a very valid question that you ask there, and that detail can be published in future reports, both the quarterly update that comes to this meeting, but also the annual report. And I'd be more than happy to share with members outside of this meeting the details of the outcomes of what took place in respect of the variations, in respect of the licensing conditions. I can say that it's varied, some of which the premises licence holder said simply, yes, I recognise this enforcement action's taken place, and the business was then sold and they moved on. Some of them, as I say, were more slight variations such as training, things like that. But I'd be happy to provide that detail for members' information outside of this meeting and make sure that that is produced in future reports for you.
Thanks, Camilla. You want to come back, Mark?
Yeah, Chair, I'd just like to know, I mean, I don't know if the officer doesn't have the information, that's fine, but in the last, say, 2 years, have we withdrawn the licence from anybody?
Of those, some of them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make sure that the information you've asked for, Mark, is included in future reports. I don't have any other members indicating that they wish to speak, so we'll go to the recommendation, which is that this committee receives the annual report on the Council's use of RIPA, and that we note the corporate guidance has been updated to reflect any changes to current legislation and best practice. Are we happy to agree that recommendation?
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Right, thank you, members. That takes us to item 6 on the agenda, Integrated Customer Services Programme Update. It's the report of the Corporate Director of Resources, and we have Vicky Murray here to present the report and presentation. Over to you, Vicky.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Vicky Murray and I'm Interim Head of Digital Customer Service, and I'm here today to walk you through the presentation that's been included in your pack regarding the Integrated Customer Service Programme. So our council has a strong reputation for providing good quality and effective customer service to the people of County Durham. We've performed extremely well since we became a unitary council, despite both financial challenges and increased demand for our services. And whilst we've made many innovative changes to the way that we serve our customers, to meet those changing expectations of the resident of the future requires the development of a customer-focused approach to how we will deliver that service in the future. Transformation of our customer service offer is not only the right thing to do, but is essential to ensure that we're best placed to manage the various challenges that we will face. And this presentation provides an update on the improvements that we've delivered so far, and also the future plans to enhance our contact offer and customer experience. So why integrated customer service? We recognise that an organisation's ability to deliver its vision, priorities and outcomes is directly linked to its ability to deliver effective customer experiences. And our council's contact centre teams play a key role in ensuring that our customers receive an enhanced experience and great start to their customer journey from that very first point of contact. And so in early 2019, we initiated a project to review contact centre demand and customer journeys across the council. The results identified to us the complexity of our offer and how in some instances it could be really difficult for our customers to interact with the right person, with the right information at the right time. We identified that our customer journeys often had multiple touch points that led to complexity and elongation. Multiple entry points for customers falling into smaller teams outside of our corporate customer service team could lead to variance in performance, the service offer, quality assurance and levels of customer satisfaction, with multiple touches extending our service delivery times, increasing repeat or avoidable contact and reducing our opportunities to resolve queries at first point of contact, whilst variance in data collection impacted the performance demand and satisfaction data being reported at a corporate level. Furthermore, different technologies used by different teams did not support a one-team approach to our customer experience delivery. So from this was born our vision for enhancing our customer service offer, which is focused on new ways of working, supporting our demand management, delivering a joined-up service and consistency, utilising customer insight and analytics to drive a greater understanding of our offer, listening to the voice of the customer, harnessing technology to improve our offer, thus delivering value for money and really acting as the customer service advocate. Our programme themes fit around three key areas: standardisation, harmonisation and unitisation. And this approach will help us to achieve our vision. We launched our Integrated Customer Service Initiative in early 2019, and it will help us and has helped us to deliver and provide the best outcomes for our customers. So looking to the future of our customer service through this programme. To create a true single front door for our customers requires a significant shift in the way that we carry out our activities, underpinned by a change in our organisational thinking. Our focus is to provide channels of choice with a focus on self-serve and utilising technology to reduce customer demand and to reduce our cost of delivery. Our design principles support an understanding of what will be handled by our first point of contact teams, and also what will then be held by our specialist support teams where additional and more complex support is required or potentially intervention is needed. But new technologies are needed to deliver on our commitments, and the components form part of our long-term IT architecture and provide a tool set that can be used across the organisation. Through our work to unify our communications approach, we're supporting new ways of working, greater flexibility, capability and agility. And the foundational work that we've delivered as part of this programme has been key over the last 9 months. Natural language technologies, virtual IVR, and tools such as web chat, chatbots, all underpinned by a knowledge database, support easy access to consistent and reliable information. And with this continuous improvement, we can deliver high quality services to customers wherever and whenever they are needed. So on slides 14 and 15, just take us through some of the milestones of the journey so far, which I don't plan to go through in detail today, but just really highlight some of the great work that has been delivered over the period the programme has been running. Slide 15 in particular highlights some of the specific work that has been delivered in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and how we've been able to utilise the foundation technologies that we put in place to support our contact centre teams across the council working from home during this period, and how we've been able to shape new offers and respond to customer needs in terms of the delivery of new channels such as web chat and also virtualised appointments. So realising the benefits. Since its launch, the Integrated Customer Service Programme has made great progress in developing a customer-focused One Council approach to our service delivery. It's delivered improvements to the customer experience, along with efficiency savings. So these have included enhanced demand management. Our virtual IVR has created a reduction of 16,000 calls transferred into our general inquiries team in 2020 in comparison to 2019. While enhanced call routing to make sure that calls get through to the right team first time has enabled over 12,000 calls to be delivered and routed directly to service areas, reducing those unnecessary touches in the customer journey. Customers can now receive web links direct to their mobile phone, pointing them to information on our web content, as well as automated service messaging to provide them with the information that they need, which doesn't require them to speak to an agent. In terms of delivering joined up services at first point of contact, over the last year we've unitised multiple first point of contact services council-wide, offsetting demand, creating capacity and enabling specialist services to support our most vulnerable residents and our most complex cases. We are utilising customer insight and data analytics to support us in understanding our customers better, their journeys and how we can enhance that experience, whilst widening our corporate reporting information through the transfer of non-ACD lines into our ACD system is enabling a true understanding of demand patterns and service performance across the council. In listening to the voice of the customer and capturing our experience and satisfaction data, it ensures that we keep the voice of the customer at the heart of our decision making, and over the last year we've seen an increase in customer satisfaction and improved first point of contact delivery across multiple areas. And through the deployment of a range of new technology approaches, we're enhancing management of demand, reducing avoidable contact and the number of unanswered contacts into the council. The introduction of web chat is supporting our drive towards a multi-channel contact centre and has helped almost 3,000 customers across multiple areas of the council access services, support and advice. It's now visible on more than 20 web pages, and as our agents can support 2 concurrent chats and chat times are lower than alternative channels, the 3.5% conversion of telephony contact to web chat is driving significant capacity creation, which has helped us support reallocation of capacity during the COVID period. Our time bot ensures customers are kept informed where they sit in a queue, how and when their call will be answered, and our voicemail service supports requests for callbacks. Deployment has supported a reduction of call answering times of 10 seconds and service improvement of 1.3%. Virtual appointments supported us with more complex queries and requests that provide an alternative to our traditional face-to-face offer. And to support the efficient delivery of a modern customer experience through a range of channels, a new multi-channel contact centre platform programme has been developed and is currently being rolled out across the corporate contact centre. This technology is flexible and efficient, it allows us to handle emails, chats, calls, SMS and open media interactions in one space, providing a single view of the customer journey. Focused on the customer and employee of the future, the solution allows users to work effectively from any location without the need for additional home working equipment. Whilst enhanced reporting, resource management and workflow capabilities support enhanced service delivery. So moving forward and looking to the future now provides a great opportunity for us to review all of our baseline data to refresh our forward plan in light of the challenges faced this year. Further stakeholder engagement and customer engagement to fully understand how our service delivery and customer expectations have changed as a result of COVID-19 is crucial. The harmonisation of the organisational contact channels will be determined by that future customer, and we'll be driving forward with organisational outcomes over the coming 2 years of the programme. So that concludes my overview of the Integrated Customer Service Programme and the progress that we've made over the previous year, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that very thorough report, Vicky. I'm sorry I had to leave the meeting halfway through to move my car. The gully cleaners came around from my car's parked over the drain. So it's ironic, isn't it? You've waited since September for the gully cleaners to come around to come halfway through a management board meeting. Anyway, thanks for that report, Vicky. I have a number of members wishing to ask questions. We'll go first to Councillor David Boyce. David.
Right, thanks. Can you hear me? You can hear me okay. It's David Boyce, Member for Easington, and I chair the Safer Stronger Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Right, okay, so yeah, I think there's some good news here, and I think some of these like sort of technological advances are long overdue with dealing with things at first point of contact's really good. And it's good that residents can contact relevant departments other than having to use the phone. But we still have a lot of older residents who are not particularly technology savvy, who do use the phone. Now, you mentioned that the call time is down 10%. Is there a KPI, Vicky, for how long it should take to like actually answer the phone? Because it was a standard joke amongst residents that there's no point trying to phone up the council because you're still going to be there 20 minutes, 25 minutes later. Now, I had occasion to use the phone system the other day. I tried to get through to one particular department, and it said that I was number somewhere number 3 in the answer, and it would take 5 minutes to get through to somebody who could deal with it. And then it said I got down to 1 and it was 23 seconds, but I was still on there another 4 or 5 minutes. So I know there's going to be teething problems. I know there's going to be issues until it gets fully bedded in. But I suppose the questions I'd like answering is there a KPI so that if a resident does phone, it does get answered within such and such time? How are we meeting these KPIs? And is the technology with regards to call waiting, is it still up to speed yet? Thank you, Chair.
Vicky?
Yes, so in terms of the corporate indicators, you're absolutely right. We do have a KPI with regards to call answering times. Our aim is to answer in excess of 80% of calls within 3 minutes. Actually, at the moment, we answer more than 98% of calls within 3 minutes, so we do exceed the corporate KPI. And as you'll be aware, that's regularly monitored and comes through this group in terms of the information that's provided in the customer feedback report. There's some additional KPIs that wrap around that, including the total percentage of calls that are answered, etc. And they are all available to view as well. Our aim is to always offer channel of choice, and I think you've brought up a really good point there, Councillor Boyce. We will always have different demographics of our residents who want to contact us in different ways, and we don't want to stop that in any way. I think it's about meeting the needs of those people who do want to interact differently and at different times, and that then creates that additional capacity to continue to deliver that extra support, especially for our more elderly residents who will certainly as well be missing some of our face-to-face offer that we haven't been able to deliver over the past few months. So in terms of that and the new technologies, we're continually testing them. And I think there will always be a few glitches. We understand that, and we do rigorously test and review, and also gather feedback from customers as well as how they're finding that information. But I will take that particular point away in terms of how quickly The system is updating to keep accurate timings and the time bot in place, and ensure that we're continuing to enhance that moving forward.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Vicky. Thanks, David. Richard Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Richard Bell, Barnard Castle West. Morning, Victoria. I don't know if this presentation is meant to cover the CRM system, the customer relationship management system, or not. But I'll raise it anyway, and that is I get quite a lot of complaints from parish councils, and I share the frustration, namely that you raise a case, so for a salt bin or a street lamp or whatever, you get an FS number back on your email, and then that's it. It kind of goes into a black hole. Either the case is left open and there's no update, or sometimes the case is closed off with no update. But there's no system, it seems, of actually you get an email back to saying, you know, the pothole at XYZ corner of Station Terrace, etc., has been filled or will be filled. It's like a one-way black hole system, which then leads to a lot of work for councillors, oftentimes chasing up where has this request got to, when's it going to be actioned, has it been done. So is there any improvements on the CRM system? Because I imagine if members of the public use that as well, they experience similar frustrations. Thanks.
I think you raise a valid point, Richard. Any members who use the CRM system will know when you get the serial number back, they might send a report back saying that it's been dealt with, and all that has been passed over to the relevant department. And on top of that, sometimes when a problem has been resolved, all you get is the FS, whatever number's being dealt with. You don't actually know what that is because there's no tagline beneath it saying that it refers to a street light or a salt bin or a pothole. So there are glitches with that system. It's an excellent system compared to what we had a few years ago, but I think it could be improved along the lines Richard's talking about. Do you have any comment on that, Vicky?
Yes, absolutely. And firstly, thank you for that feedback. Whilst this report doesn't cover the CRM, I am aware from feedback from members about some of the challenges that you have been facing. As Scrutiny Management Board will be aware, we did engage in some review activity to capture feedback from members to understand some of the challenges that they were facing, particularly with the case management element of the system. And whilst a number of improvements have been made, what I would have to say is some of those improvements that we were due to move forward with have been delayed as a result of additional development work, new web forms and additional web content that we've had to produce in response to COVID. That said, work hasn't stopped and we continue to work on those improvements. We are planning to come back to the original working group to reinitiate some of the work that we originally did around that. As I think significant time has passed, we need to be able to report and update on that which we have delivered, understand what's still outstanding and gather requirements for any future changes, whether it be within this CRM or when the CRM is up for renewal in the future. So it's really, really important that we work with our members to understand how we can better enhance that. We've done a lot of development work around the workflow and particularly around the communications and messaging, because that is some of the feedback that we originally received, whether that be a response comes back and tells you the work is happening, but that then the work has been added to a wider, say, for example, highways programme, which can run for up to 12 to 18 months, or whether it's just been closed and there isn't additional commentary out there. So we continue to work on that and we'll be bringing an update back soon in terms of the progress around that. And I will build some extra commentary into the next customer feedback report that will just reflect some of those comments and the additional work that's taking place.
Thanks for that, Vicky. I'm pleased to hear you say that you'll bring out the further report, because I think Richard raised a valid point there about the way the CRM system works, and it's something as a committee that we will keep an eye on in future, so thanks for that. Eddie Adam?
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Eddie Adam, Aycliffe West, but also Chair of Environment and Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny. Thanks, Vicky, for your report. As we can clearly see here, a tremendous amount of work going on over a relatively short period of time, and I think it clearly is enhancing the customer's experience of contacting Durham County Council. But there's always a however, because we can always improve. and I'm sure we will be, and there's a lot of action taking place to make sure that we do. What I would like to focus on, though, however, is real customer involvement in testing of the system, because that is the only way you're really going to find out whether it works. And I'm not sure whether you identified that we're using real customers, or whether it was our teams within the council that were testing this, because sometimes the language that is used and the statements and links are not understood by members of the public and customers, and I wonder how much testing has been done on that, and whether we actually have direct feedback from a wide range of our customers. Thanks, Vicky.
Yep, so they're again really valid points, and I think that we have a programme of work particularly starting around customer experience and customer satisfaction to enhance the approach that we take now as we move into the new year. Because whilst we do capture significant customer satisfaction data, it primarily comes from those individuals who engage through the CRM system. And that in itself can cause challenge in that quite often it's only for those more emotive subjects that people will give feedback for, and not the everyday experience or maybe where they've been really happy with the service that we've delivered. However, we do have a customer focus group which we use specifically around the CRM and have deployed feedback from in terms of developing some of these new technologies, particularly with our voice recognition as well. We did wider stakeholder engagement, meeting with disability groups and gathering their feedback. But I do take your point that, you know, we always want to deliver our service in plain English and ensure that any of the language that we use, particularly pointing people to internal departments, is easy for them to understand. So we'll look at the demographic of that group and see if there's anybody else we can include as we move forward with our wider customer engagement and insight programme.
Thanks, Vicky. Mark Wilkes.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Just in terms of what Councillor Bell and yourself have mentioned there about the CRM system, both Jenny and Victoria will be aware that I've raised some things previously. I've actually raised some things about 8 years ago about it regarding emails and things, which have still not really got to a point. And I'm not convinced myself personally that in another year's time we'll see that all of these issues have been ironed out. But there is one specific issue which drives me nuts, I have to say, and that is that the online portal is so slow for somebody like me, where I'm putting in lots of reports, and for many residents in the county where they're out and about and they spot a problem, they don't necessarily have great reception with their phones, and it takes so long to log in that actually you just send an email. And the other reason you send an email is because you take a photograph of a problem, and unless you copy in the relevant officer that you know who's going to deal with it, it never gets to them. And this is still the case now. About, it must be 8 years since I first raised this, that if we're going to have a system where you email, where you're being asked where is something, where is the fly tipping, where is the problem, so you send in a photograph of it, and years go by where you keep saying but it's not getting through to the frontline officers. What the result is that they end up having to come back to you, or the thing just falls out of the system, doesn't get dealt with. The resident gets upset, reports it again. I've got one particular resident in my area who seems to report things on an almost daily basis, and then complains when it's not dealt with, when he's sent a photograph and we can't find the problem. And I just think that it must be simple when somebody's sent in a photograph to simply add it on the system somewhere, even if it's a poor quality one, just so that the officers on the front line, the guys out doing the litter picking, the fly tipping teams, can actually see it, instead of having to this backwards and forwards, keep coming backwards and forwards to us, or indeed it just dropping off the system completely. And I'm a bit sick to death, to be honest, of keep asking for this.
Vicky?
No, I take on board your feedback, Councillor Wilkes, and I know that we've worked separately on some of these issues, some of which we've been able to resolve and some which remain on that continuous improvement work stack. But I think it's important that we build this in, all of this feedback, as part of the update that we will bring back, and the the approach for the future in determining, how can we resolve some of these issues and how can we make sure, especially as we've seen over the last 9 months, where people are wanting to interact with us more digitally, that the platform that we have suits their needs and the needs of the future. Aside from that, we're also doing lots of work in my wider team around connectivity and understanding where some of those issues might sit in terms of mobile connectivity and also broadband connectivity, so that we can ensure that people don't all only have the form to do it, but they've got the right levels of connectivity to be able to report. And also determining on our mapping system if that is the best solution, or are there other alternatives or applications that could support more ease of access when you see an issue, when you're out and about, where that can be quickly recorded and updated and routed through to the relevant team. So absolutely take on board your feedback.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Mark. Before I bring Alison Beatty in, I've got Tom Gorman indicating that he wishes to speak on the assumption you want to comment on that specific point. Tom, do you want to come in?
That's correct, Chair. It was on the point that Councillor Wilkes raised in relation to locating an issue. And sometimes the team goes out and they can't find, for instance, a fly tip, which is quite a common thing. And we had a presentation on fly tipping to Environment and Sustainable Communities, Overview and Scrutiny Committee just the other week. And there was a suggestion that we use the What 3 Words app, because that you can locate things down to, I think it's a square metre or something like that, which I think it was Councillor Milburn that actually suggested it. And Ian Holt did agree to take that away and have a look at that as a further development to the system, which it is a particular issue with fly tipping, because often it's on a piece of open ground and you can't see, it's next to that lamppost or whatever, it's just in the middle of nowhere. So using the What 3 Words app would actually sort of pinpoint where the fly tip is and help the team locate it more effectively. Thanks for that, Tom. It's a valid point. We do have a number of problems. Those living in rural areas and those of us living on the coast, we often have problems pinpointing particular areas on the map. There's a map on the portal system. And it's sometimes difficult trying to find out the ownership and find out what happens with that complaint when there are patches of ownership in rural areas and along the coast. But I'm pleased to hear that we're taking that up. And that which 3 words sounds to be a pretty good solution if it's workable. So I wish I'd thought of it rather than Olga, but we will see how that develops. Alison Beatty.
Actually, that was exactly what my point was going to be. I was just actually going to remind the committee of that Sustainable Communities overview and scrutiny where that was actually mentioned. So Tom's already covered it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alison. I have no other members indicating that they wish to speak, so we'll go to the recommendation in the report. Is that this committee notes and comments on the information in the report and supporting presentation. Are we happy to do that, members?
Great.
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us to item 7, Q2 2020-21 Performance Management Report. And we have Jenny Howarth this morning to take us through this report. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. Jenny Howarth, Head of Strategy. This is the regular report that the committee receive on the overview of the Council's performance. And it's setting out the performance as at Q2 of the year, which is through to the end of September. The report, I'm going to talk through the summary report, and then I'm also going to give Alison Lazizera a chance to come in and comment on specific aspects in relation to the Excellent Council theme, if that's okay, Chair, just so that we can make sure we give a rounded presentation that picks up some of the corporate issues points as well. Going to the summary report, the report starts off by highlighting the context within which this report and the performance of the Council is being delivered through paragraphs 2 to 5, which is in the context of the impact of COVID-19, as we're all aware. And paragraph 4 highlights the significant public health role the Council has in response to the pandemic. It highlights the restrictions we've been working under, with some buildings having had to be closed and a number of services moving online, and how we've had to adapt, and the huge really pace and scope of change to service provision and ways of working which has taken place and that has influenced this performance report. And obviously our colleagues in HR have been right at the heart of that in making sure we look after our people through that change, Chair. It also highlights that much of our work has been responding directly to community and business needs, both in terms of the immediate pandemic response and also developing plans for recovery, and that we've also had an active role in the emergency arrangements, working in partnership with other agencies on the local resilience forum, including police, fire, and also closely with Darlington Council and of course all the local NHS system. And there's a link to the member dashboard that we update twice weekly, which we had member seminars on recently. Turning to the main element of the performance report in the cover report, we highlight at paragraph 6, the report is focused as usual around the 3 externally focused ambitions of the County Durham Vision: more and better jobs, longer and independent lives and connected communities, and also a 4th excellent council theme, which is set out in the recently approved council plan. In terms of more and better jobs, paragraph 7, the report highlights the ongoing economic slump that we recorded, which was the biggest slump on record between April and June, with national GDP falling by over 20%. And but that at paragraph 8, we did see some recovery over the summer with growing confidence as the COVID cases fell. Unfortunately, as we all know, at paragraph 9, we have now experienced a second wave. We had the autumn lockdown, and so the impact continues to be severe. Paragraph 11 highlights from a data perspective. Actually, the latest data we have on employment shows a marginal increase in the employment rate, which is counterintuitive, but that's because, as the committee are aware, we always have a significant data lag in terms of employment data, but also because when we look at the summer, we've got really the employment situation being very much propped up through a third of eligible jobs being supported through furlough, and 3/4 of self-employed people being supported through the National Income Support Scheme in response to COVID-19. Paragraph 12 highlights more up-to-date data, and obviously the full detail is within the attached report. But with the universal credit claimant count, we can see the picture in terms of unemployment-related claims through the end of September. And I know colleagues in economy scrutiny will be looking at this quite hard, but particularly drawing out in this summary the significant increase in claimants in the 16 to 24-year-old age range, which was a 62% increase over the last 6 months, which equates to almost 2,000 young people in our local area. The report also draws out that we've seen over this same time period through to the end of September, and I know some of this is continued, Chair, increased retail vacancy rates in many of our town centres. We've also seen an estimated loss of £445 million in local economy spend in relation to our leisure, tourism and hospitality sectors. And obviously it's been raised, I think, in the Q1 report, concern about the knock-on effect in terms of poverty and pressure on local communities when we're already in the top 40% most deprived upper tier authorities in England. Paragraph 13 highlights some of the work mitigating against these significant challenges that we, like other parts of the country, are facing. It highlights the continual support of employees and businesses through projects and also a huge amount of grants that the council has administered, with a particular focus on inequality in employment and a particular focus on young people. Also work through the County Durham Economic Partnership and the Council to develop an agile economic recovery plan, which is work that's ongoing, and a pipeline of investment projects to stimulate the economy. There's also a big focus in that work on employability programmes, again something the Economy Committee may wish to pick up, and obviously this report will go on from here to each of the individual thematic committees, who can then consider the detail in relation to their areas of responsibility. Turning to the second theme, longer and independent lives. Paragraph 15, we highlight the poverty pressures which remain a major issue, again highlighting the issue of 1 in 4 children across the county living in poverty, and the lack of take-up of free school meals, but also highlighting the programme we had in place over half-term to support families reliant on free school meals. Paragraph 16 highlights we have, in spite of the COVID-related response, continued to improve outcomes for vulnerable children and their families in terms of our Stronger Families programme, where we've seen in the data significant and sustained outcomes now for around 6,000 families. Paragraph 17 highlights a big concern, which is the mental well-being impact on people, with more people seeking support through primary and secondary mental health services, and also young people with a history of mental health issues reporting increased anxiety, isolation and loss of coping mechanisms and loss of motivation. Bearing in mind this report was at the end of September, so we're looking back at data from when schools had been closed, Chair. Paragraph 18 again highlights some positive progress we've got in terms of some of the well-being measures we are continually trying to address, which is we're now seeing a lower proportion of mothers smoking at time of delivery and a greater percentage breastfeeding compared to the same period last year, which is pleasing when, you know, we look at the current health situation overall. And the final paragraph 19 on this section is highlighting that our level of referrals coming from adult social care have returned to their pre-pandemic levels. Also, as at the end of September, we've got some evidence of recovery in our older people care homes, with no or few reported issues of COVID-19 infection, PP or staffing problems at the end of September. Clearly, since then, we've had the significant challenge of the second wave. So there's ongoing work and continued coordinated and targeted support right across the adult care sector in terms of whether it be domiciliary care or residential care providers, Chair. But that paragraph also highlights within the health economy that we scrutinise, there's a significant GP referral backlog with more than 47,000 urgent and non-urgent secondary care cases as at the end of September, Chair, which again highlights the need to be able to keep the NHS open for non-COVID related business through all the work communities continue to do to suppress the virus. Moving on to the third theme of the vision, connected communities. This is split into 2 elements. We've got firstly a focus on the safer aspects of connected communities, and we highlight at paragraph 20 positives in relation to work to keep children and young people safe. So throughout the pandemic, we've continued to perform well in terms of timeliness of processing statutory referrals through the first contact arrangements, and also in terms of then the next stage, the single assessments. And alongside, there's been an ongoing programme of audit to make sure that the quality of the assessments remains consistent and at good quality. However, we are experiencing at paragraph 21 significant budget and placement pressures because demand for children's social care, particularly at the higher end of support, remains high. So we have increasing numbers of children on a child protection plan, and we also have the highest recorded numbers of looked after children. And so it's going to be important, and just to notify the committee, we're due to publish our new sufficiency strategy shortly in relation to accommodation, setting out how we'll relieve pressures caused by the increase in looked after children that we've seen. And again, highlighting that some of that relates to closure of family courts during lockdown, which to some extent has slowed processes in terms of providing that long-term sort of care plan for some of those children. We've also highlighted in that paragraph that we haven't seen an increase in safeguarding referrals once the schools reopened, and we're continuing to explore with the service in detail the reasons behind that, and understand also the impact of changes implemented at the front door over the last year, which includes a change in more frequent daily screening of all domestic abuse incidents. So previously it was a sort of smaller set of high priority, but now it's all of them. So I think that's an improvement in process, but we're just needing to monitor that in terms of what we see in terms of that referrals profile. I did just check in with colleagues this morning at what we're seeing in terms of those safeguarding referrals to schools, and there has been some increase, but the levels are still sort of lower than what we'd expect, so that work's ongoing. Moving on to paragraph 22, overall crime levels have fallen slightly, but we have seen increases in violence against the person and antisocial behaviour. Most of that increase is recorded as COVID related, and again that might be something that colleagues in the SAFER committee wish to follow up on. Also highlighting that some new initiatives to mitigate against the challenges we face, so the new triage systems for domestic abuse, and also child exploitation vulnerability tracker has been expanded to include all children, and we continue to take steps to improve water safety both in the Durham City area around the Weir, but also county-wide. Turning to the sustainable communities aspect of connected communities, paragraph 24 highlights that our environmental cleanliness levels based on the most recent survey are remaining good, so that's very positive, and there are a range of initiatives highlighted to improve the local environment, although there has been an increase in fly tipping incidents. In terms of carbon emissions, they continue to decrease significantly. There has been an extra boost to that because of the pandemic, but nevertheless we're on a track of improvement there and continue to work towards being carbon neutral in 2050. Paragraph 26 highlights that traffic levels have returned to 85 to 90% of pre-COVID levels. Bus passenger numbers about 50%, but that's the data at the end of September. There's likely to have been a further fall off during the second lockdown, so that support to bus companies continues to remain critical onto bus routes. And cycling figures have doubled across the county, which is an amazing level of change to see, and one which the Environment Committee may wish to consider in terms of those transport measures in more detail. And finally on that section, and certainly not least, in terms of housing solutions, there's been an increase in presentations, but I think the main concern is as we look towards the end of the year and lifting the government's eviction ban, what that might do in terms of the potential issues vulnerable people may face at that point. And the report also reflects current difficulties in securing accommodation that service has been facing in the COVID context. So there's a lot of work ongoing there to continue to address the needs of vulnerable people who have housing related issues. The final section is on the excellent council theme, and this is focused on the adaptation that services have made and highlighting some of those changes. For example, the successful reinstatement of 23 services during Q2, but also that services have seen unusual spikes in demand, and one of which has been an increase in noise complaints as more residents spend more time at home. Paragraph 30 and 31 pick up some of the work that our colleagues in HR have done in conjunction with heads of service across the council to safeguard our employees, which I know is of real interest to the committee. So as well as instructing all staff who can do to work at home where possible and reinforcing that message as we came into Q2 and we came back to September, there were also steps put in place to manage and control transmission risks for people, essential employees who were unable to work from home, and also offering free influenza jabs to all employees, and also work on tackling the emotional toll the pandemic is taking. Paragraph 31 highlights the sickness position, which I'm pleased to say remains broadly in line with last year, except we've got a higher percentage of staff than ever recording no sickness. So, you know, I think that's a tribute to the workforce and the commitment people do show working from home to sort of keep working even when they have been suffering illness. and also highlights our learning and development programme, and that we've had the highest number of apprenticeship starts in any year this year, so supporting that development. Paragraph 32 highlights ongoing programme of cultural and digital change and training and organisational development, which I know some of which has been touched on by Vicky, and I'm sure Alison may say a bit more about some of the HR related aspects. And finally, Chair, in relation to paragraph 33, it's highlighting the challenging winter we're now entering, the scale of the financial challenge, where the additional COVID costs incurred and loss of income are forecasted to exceed 100 million, and the continued work that the council does using some of the national funding streams, as well as lobbying government for additional financial support. Chair, the recommendation in the report is that to consider and comment on the overall position and direction of travel, and you may want to bring Alison Lazazera in to say a few more things about the people aspect.
Thanks, Jenny. I've got to say there's some excellent work going on at the moment, and against the backdrop of the pandemic and ongoing austerity, I think that's testament to the officers at the council, to the members, and to other workers across the public and private sectors in the county. However, we're still haunted by this, the pandemic, and all of it's underwritten by this uncertainty. And I think that's one of the particular problems facing the authority in our communities at the moment. But as you all know, these data sets will be reported back to each of the thematic committees, and they'll pick up sections as necessary. But now's the opportunity to have your first say if you wish to. I'm minded to bring in Alison Lazazera first before we go to members, just so we have the comments that Jenny referred to. Alison?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points I'd like to make. I think, Jenny's already echoed it throughout this period. Our workforce have been phenomenal. We have seen a steady picture in absence. Actually, I think we anticipated it would peak dramatically. We haven't seen that. We've managed to redeploy over 500 staff voluntarily into areas of high priority. We've equipped them with the right training, and actually they've had a positive experience. We've had a lot of staff go into the community hub in terms of supporting the critical work and into some frontline services. So our staff have been absolutely phenomenal. Our managers have been equally as positive in terms of how they've supported the staff throughout this period. Huge numbers of staff working from home, have never worked in that kind of environment before. And, with the IT, the HR guidance and the changes in policies and practice we've put into place, that has worked incredibly well. We have obviously had a lot of feedback from the staff that we'll take forward in terms of this period to make sure that we pick up on any learning, but also we hold on to the positive things that have come out of this. And there are many, many positive things that have been reported in terms of how staff have felt that the organisation have responded and how they've been supported throughout the period. Just picking up on a couple of points in terms of sickness absence, as Jenny said, this has been very steady. We haven't seen the peak that we were expecting to see, and the COVID related absences again have been small for the size of the authorities. That's been a real positive for us in terms of just monitoring that as we've gone through, but being ready should they have peaked to be able to move quickly in terms of capacity. The absence, we still obviously have a higher number in terms of long-term absence being the majority of absence. However, what we do know is that around 95% of those absences are actually individuals are returning to work within 6 months or leaving the organisation. So we are actually managing long-term sickness cases really well. The positive attendance rates again are really, really high. So in terms of the numbers with no absence, 63% overall. And when you look at the details sitting behind that for each directorate, it's fairly consistent in terms of the 50s and 60%. So again, some real positives there.
Apprentices, I think, has been our highlight as we've continued with the apprenticeship programme. We were reported as being the only local authority in the North East, and only 12 in the country have been in the top 100 employers for apprentices, which recognises the number of apprenticeship opportunities we deliver, how we upskill, spend the levy, and helping people into employment. So that's, you know, been at a high for us in terms of the support for the apprenticeship programme. We have around an 80% retention rate and above for apprentices continuing with posts in the local authority. And we have a fantastic example only in the last couple of weeks of an apprentice who's only been with us for 10 weeks, and they've actually secured a permanent post with the council. So some real positives there in terms of our apprenticeship activity. And I think the last thing to say is it's, you know, obviously our main focus is on new apprentices, but we are using the apprenticeship routes and the levy to upskill our existing employees as well, which is in the hundreds. So using the apprenticeship standards that are available, mapping them across each service area and making sure we're utilising them to upskill our own workforce through relevant qualifications and training. So just a couple of points there, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. We'll go to members now for questions and comments. We have Richard Bell first. Richard.
Thanks, Chair. Unusually for me, a couple of sort of cultural questions, I think, probably for Alison. And I'm harking back to my time as a manager in a big company. So the first is very welcome, the large number of staff recording no sickness over the same period. And that's, I'm wondering if people are working from home, then obviously if you're feeling a bit off colour, you can regulate what you do more rather than, certainly my employer had an approach, you were either sick or if you were back at work, you were 100% firing in all cylinders, whereas I was always a big believer in kind of like light duties, which was not company policy. The second thing is, do we actually recognise in any way those staff who haven't taken any time off sick? So again, back to my employer, opinions varied on management from well, you get paid to do a job, you should be here, why do you need, you know, gratitude for turning in all the time, at one end of the scale, to another end of the scale, people suggesting like vouchers for people who have got 100% sickness. But I always used to recognise it in terms of annual appraisals. Sickness was one of the things I used to review, and at the very least, if somebody has recorded no sickness, I used to say thank you for that, it's noted, it's appreciated. So I just wondered, in terms of those two cultural sort of issues on sickness, if you had any thoughts as to how the council sits on that. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bell. In terms of culture, I think there is possibly, you know, an impact in terms of the number of staff working from home, because I think it probably would be wrong to say that if you're feeling a little bit under the weather, maybe some staff have carried on, you know, in terms of doing the job as it's easier to do in the home environment. We do try and take a fairly flexible approach. So in terms of, you know, rather than if you're sick, you're sick, I think we do try and sort of support staff if they feel well enough to continue to work to do that. So that's the approach that we've taken, certainly over the last couple of years, and certainly in the last year, where we have had a lot of staff working from home. In terms of the recognition for those where there's been no sickness absence, this is an interesting one. I think we've debated this many times over and over again. I've been in local authorities that have done that. I've been in local authorities that haven't. The position I think that the trade unions have taken when we've talked on a few occasions around this is that sometimes it's really difficult because you can be off, but actually for something that you can't help. And we may also sort of edge our way towards disability issues, attributing to sickness. So for those reasons only, we've taken the stance not to recognise sickness or full attendance. However, we do encourage our managers through normal performance management, obviously, to have the right complementary discussions with individuals where that is the case, as well as overall performance. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Bell.
Yeah. There's recognition as informal financial payments, which is not what I'm suggesting, but recognition as in just saying thank you, it's noted, kind of recognition. Yes. Yeah.
We've done a lot of work over the last year just trying to work with managers to do a lot more of that, because I think, you know, whilst we can put all of the corporate initiatives in place around letters or awards or recognition ceremonies, actually sometimes just the personal thank you and the acknowledgement and recognition means more to staff than the other things do. So we're working really hard with our managers to instill that culture.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. Mark Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. The officer referred to care homes at paragraph 83 of the report, and at page 10 of our papers, members will recall that we requested a review of what was going on in care homes in respect of COVID months ago, and it's in the report here to say that I actually did ask that. At the time, I think that we were looking at something in the order of 60 deaths per 1,000 people in care homes. The current rate is showing up at nearly 90 now, and that doesn't take into account 42 people, according to officers, who have passed away in hospital but have gone there from a care home. So in actual fact, we're now at a point where potentially 1 in 10 of people living in care homes in County Durham have died of COVID. Now, those figures are based upon the number of beds in the county, not on the occupancy. So the actual rate is potentially even higher. I find myself feeling like I'm banging against a brick wall, a door that just won't open. It was raised at full council yesterday. We are still seeing people dying in our care homes, people being taken from our care homes into hospital and dying there. And this council, whether it be at Scrutiny, full council, cabinet or anywhere else, is simply refusing to look in detail at what's going on in our care homes. And if this was in the wider population, that 1 in 10 people had died, can you imagine how many deaths that would be across this county and across the country? Do we really think we wouldn't be thinking, what on earth should we be doing differently? And yet here we are, the rate still going up in our care homes, more and more people finding that their grandparents and parents are no longer here, and this council refusing point blank to conduct any kind of review whatsoever of what's going on. I think it's an absolute disgrace, Chair.
Well, as you rightly suggest, Mark, that issue was rounded off yesterday at full council. As far as I'm concerned, that's a comment that you've made. It'll be recorded. I've trawled through the minutes of every meeting that I've been involved in, and I've never had any request for a review into care homes, certainly this year. So I don't know where that information's come from. Each of those set of minutes have been endorsed at a subsequent meeting where all members have been present. There's nothing recorded in any of the minutes that I've seen. But regardless, they're your comments, they will be noted. But as far as I'm concerned, the issue was raised at yesterday's full council and the matter is now closed. David Boyes.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is a theme which is related to my committee, and it's a theme that I've been developing since the last meeting as well. And just to point out, you know, that like 39% of violence against the person issues have been linked to domestic violence, as well as a 26.7% increase in alcohol-related incidents in the same period last year. Now, these are things that we need to worry about as a council, because we're going to have a generation of people who's grown up where they're going to be thinking it's normal to see domestic violence, and I know women can hit men, but it's generally men hitting women on this particular issue, and their children having to see it. Our school, our local primary school, the head's actually looking for telltale signs of the kids that's coming in with bruises, and that's a sad indictment of us as a society. But these are issues, I suppose, it's beyond this particular management board. The one thing I do really want to focus on today is this 93% increase in environmental and antisocial behaviour compared to the same period last year. Now, I think a lot of this is to dealing with Eddie Adams's committee as well, but a lot of it is to do with crime. We've had a lot of incidents where young lads mainly are driving around on off-road bikes, and they're doing it with impunity. And I feel we're getting this cohort of young people who just think they're beyond the law now because there hasn't been a visible presence of the police. And again, that's more of a tracker than a target for us. But with regards to the neighbourhood wardens, I appreciate that the safety of our staff is paramount. But is there a situation here where they're not going out to deal with members of the public for fear of sort of catching COVID? But I've had an incident lately where I've had quite a bit of fly tipping. I said I would take the neighbourhood warden to the place because he couldn't find it with his GPS. He said he'd rather that I wasn't there because he didn't want to deal with people. He'd rather try and find it himself. And I've had other incidents with regards to fly tipping, and the officers, the wardens, didn't want to go to the house. Now I don't know if this is like our council policy where the neighbourhood wardens they're either themselves reluctant to go and deal with members of the public, or they're being told not to go and knock on doors. Because I did have one resident say I could go to Asda and be amongst 200-300 people, but yet warden will not come with a mask and knock on a door to like sort of investigate fly tipping. So as I said, I think our staff's doing a fantastic job, and I think safety is paramount. But if this situation's going to go on for the next few months and beyond, I just think we need to be aware that we still need to deal with members of the public. The police still need to deal with members of the public. And at the moment, without a visible presence of our staff and of the police, that I think we are in danger of having a group of people, young people especially, who think they're just going to be able to get away with things because there isn't going to be anybody there stopping them. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks, David. Are you suggesting that we follow that through your committee rather than asking for a response this morning?
Yes, I'm prepared to take this through. It is a general theme the Safer Strongest been dealing with anyway, and I'm prepared to report to the next management board meeting what findings we come up with. Thank you. Thanks,
David. Amanda Hopgood.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got a few points, Chair, if that's all right. This one's really directed for David Boyce for your committee around safety and school crossing patrols. I've had a few residents speak to me and say about traffic speed and things still around schools, and that they've seen some unbelievable near misses with crossing patrols. Now, all our neighbourhood wardens and everything have cameras. Is that something that we could look into with regards to lollipop men and ladies? And is that something that you would have a look at within your scrutiny committee, please?
Can I answer on behalf of the chair? I would say that it's something we can certainly look at. I can go back to Jonathan Slee and say we already have a packed programme leading up to next year's election, but I think it's certainly something that we can explore. That's right. Your indulgence, Chair.
Thanks, David. A question for Alison. You mentioned apprentices, and something that I'd picked up on, and that's great news about the one last week, but actually how many apprentices do we keep on after they've finished their qualifications? Because I think that's something that we should see, because what I'd hate to do is we hear so many, it's a fantastic thing to do, but we hear of so many companies who use them, take on apprentices because they're cheap, and then as soon as it's finished, they're laid off. And I just don't want the council to do that. I would like to think that we're training them for the future and for our workforce. So I'd like some feedback on that. And then the final thing is two things around carbon neutral and planning, which I appreciate it's not a huge thing to do with scrutiny, but we do need to look at strategy. And on paragraph 25, we talk about, as a county, carbon emissions continue to significantly decrease, and we support businesses to become energy efficient. The very first building that we've passed planning permission for, that is our own on Akeley Heads, meets no carbon efficiency and doesn't even meet our own standards of what we've put in the County Durham plan. So I think as a council we need to lead by example, and if we want other people to make carbon neutral buildings, and for us to make sure that we get there by 2050, then we need to make sure that we are flying the flag for that and doing it properly. And the same applies to page 61, which is around businesses. And again, we look and we see how many empty retail outlets we've got. Durham City stood at 16.4, the Arneson Centre stood at 12.1, and we approve another out of town shopping centre within walking distance of the Arneson Centre with less buildings than are empty in the current site. And again, improving the carbon footprint. So I just want us to have a look at strategy and what we're putting out there and how we're ever going to meet these targets if we keep building when we've already got empty spaces around. Thanks, Chair.
As you're aware, Amanda, we've had a look at issues around the retail offer in the county, and I think that chimes pretty much with what you're saying about void properties, certainly in the retail sector. Clearly, that's beyond the remit of scrutiny if we're looking at decisions made in the planning process, and I know you're not suggesting that. So it's something we maybe pick up in the Economy and Enterprise Committee. I don't know if any officers have any comments on the other points that Amanda's raised.
Chair, thank you. I can comment on the apprenticeships. Yeah, we've Councillor Hopgood, we've got around about an 85% retention rate into our own posts. When I think of the numbers, I generally check them every quarter. The ones that don't end up staying on with us are either, they either leave because they secure employment elsewhere, but that's a tiny number. Or maybe a couple of them may have chosen to take a different career route, but it is a really small number. So we're about 85%. I can get the definite numbers for you. Retention rate. What we do during the course of the year as well is that we work on a quarterly basis with managers to anticipate when an apprenticeship may end. So we do lots of work in advance of it, months and months in advance of it, to make sure that we give the apprentices the best opportunity of being able to secure a job with the council. And throughout their apprenticeship, we're seeing lots of individuals move on before they've even completed the apprenticeship. So it's really strong in terms of the approach that we're taking on that. But I can make sure those figures are in for the next report.
Chair, can I thank Alison for that? That's brilliant news, and that should be something that we're reporting, because that should be something that we're so proud of, that we're taking people into the apprenticeship scheme and they've got long-term jobs. So that's something that is a really big good news story. Thank you.
Are you okay with those responses then, Amanda? Mark, I can see you've requested to come back in. I'm not going to get into debate on care homes, mind. The point I was making was that there was a question put to full council at the end of October suggesting that Scrutiny had ignored calls for a review into care homes. That's never been the case, because as I said, you've been through the minutes, nothing recorded before that point where anybody had raised a request for review into care homes. If you want to clarify your point, I'm happy to win. Hang on a minute, I'm not going to go into a debate about it, mate.
I do want to clarify on it, Chair, and I just want to read the paragraph in today's papers at page 10. Councillor Wilkes thanked officers for their work in pulling the report together whilst acknowledging Councillor Martin's comments. He went on to make reference to COVID-19 related issues in care homes and noted that in terms of the work programme, Scrutiny were yet to see anything on the agenda in respect of reviewing what happened in County Durham and the way in which the council approached the issue. He added that it greatly concerned him that this topic had not been included in the work programme, and that as the county fell into a worse situation again with rising COVID-19 infections, he felt this was needed to be reviewed urgently before further problems started to arise within the county's care homes. That's the point at which I actually asked, please can we review this? And there were many other occasions as well. And this is a recorded meeting, Chair.
The point you were making, Mark, was raised on the 29th of October. The point I'm making is that there was an accusation levelled at Scrutiny that they had ignored a review into care homes, and that was made before you made those points there. The point I'm making at that full council meeting, I believe it was on the 23rd or the 25th of October, that was said in a question to the cabinet member that consistent requests to scrutiny for review to care homes have been ignored. That's a slur on the members and the officers of scrutiny, because that had never been made. You've raised a point after that full council meeting. Now, that's the point that I'm clarifying. From now on, that issue's closed, mate.
Those minutes are from June, not October.
John Turnbull? John, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that, Chair. Alison, it's mainly a question to you. Is there any way in which members can be informed when any of our employee, senior managers or managers have left the authority due to ill health or have passed away? Because I've had the case over the last fortnight. I tried to contact somebody, and the person who I spoke to was actually embarrassed to tell us that the person had left terminally ill. I was out on the street on Monday and I happened to bump into one of our employees who told us not to try and contact a certain employee because he died suddenly at work, a youngish gentleman. So I just think if there was any way in which members can be informed so they're not trying to chase somebody that's not there and putting themselves and whoever they're talking to in an embarrassing situation. Thanks.
Any comments on that, officers?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Turnbull. We'll look into that. It may be that it's more appropriate where officers are dealing with sort of certain councillors on a regular basis, certain members on a regular basis. But I'll certainly look into that and we'll come back in terms of an approach or a response to that.
You're on mute, Chair. Right, sorry. I was apologising to John Robinson. I've missed him out. I called John Turnbull by mistake. So we'll go to John Robinson now. John?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just refer to something that Councillor Hopgood said before I actually say what I wanted to talk? I fully agree with you, Amanda. And in fact, another organisation, which is the Combined Fire Authority, of which 22 of our members sit on, has actually just won the National Employer of the Year Award for apprenticeships. So there's something else, a positive that we as a county can sell, because after all, it's 25 people on the authority, of which we are 22. I would like to refer to, first one, Mr. Chairman, is can I thank the officers, and I read in here what the work they are doing, and thank Councillor Smith. It's not my committee, but I have grave concerns about the impacts of paragraph 12, paragraph 15, paragraph 17, and they all revolve around the 16 to 24-year-olds. They all revolve around our children and the future of the County of Durham. It worries me. I'd like to say appalled, but I don't know whether I'm allowed to, that 62% increase on young people going on to universal credit. We then look at young people who are not claiming free meals. 1 in 4 people in this county, 4 children in this county are in poverty. That means 1 in 4 families are in poverty. We've got 4,000 not applying. I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, and I've sat for the last half hour wondering whether I could say this word or not. I think some of that is pride, because certainly if I was somebody employed, my pride would affect me going for free school meals. I think we need to work on making it so that claiming free school meals is nothing wrong. It's somebody's right to protect the children. And then the one that really gets you is paragraph 17, when we listen to the mental health of our young people. I know a lot's being put, Mr. Chairman, but there's always emphasis every time I put the telly on about business, but perhaps we could put an emphasis on what Mark Hooks has just said is a recorded meeting. This county's concerned about the future of our young people post-COVID. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. I suspect that was a comment rather than a question, but do any, I've got Alison, which indicates she was to speak. Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just thought it was timely to mention that the authority have signed up to the government's Future Jobs Initiative, which includes the Kickstart scheme. We've been able to identify 91 job placements for young individuals on universal credit between the ages of 16 and 24. We've just submitted our proposal to the government for funding, and we're awaiting the outcome of that. So we'll be working on that initiative in the new year to secure those job placements for individuals.
Thanks, Alice. Are you happy with that, John?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. You're right, it was a comment. It's off my chest now.
Okay, thanks, John. Alan Shield.
Thanks, Chair. Before I make a comment, I'd just like to sort of echo the sentiments of Councillor David Boyes. I've had a number of instances where wardens have unfortunately refused to attend neighbours who were and residents who were antisocial behaviour issues, and they were attended by the police and also myself. And the police had actually asked the question, is a warden's life more important than a police officer's life? So I think there are some issues that need to be addressed with that. My raising of my concern is to do with long and independent lives, and it's item 41, and that's suicide rates within County Durham, which are at a significant high rate, 13.4 within 100,000 people population. Given that we have 520,000 people, that means that we have suicide deaths over and above, or nearly 50 people per year, and it's higher than all other areas in the northeast. It's been previously acknowledged that we do have areas of hotspot areas, and certainly northwest Durham, the Consett area, has been noted as that, particularly for male people up to the age of 40. And the reason for my concern is that we've recently it's been announced of the closure of Derwenside Mine, and these rates are between 2017 and 2019. So can we just imagine the effect that we will see with these rates, with the level of mental health increases because of social isolation since we've hit the restrictions caused by the pandemic? And I'm really alarmed that I'd like to see a formal strategy to try and address this, certainly in northwest Durham, in the Consett area, where it's been acknowledged that we've had the hotspots before. And I'm really concerned as to what the level of rates will be post-COVID, March 23rd this year. And I'd like the officers to acknowledge the cause for concern and where we intend to address this. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alan. You raise a valid point, and it has been raised at the meeting of the, I think it was the Safer Stronger Communities Committee. I've just noted David Boyes wants to come in. Is it on that point, David?
It is, Chair, and it's just backing up what Alan Shields just said, and the fact that once that public health money gets taken away from us as a council, you know, we were doing exceptionally well getting young people who were on drugs through successful drug completion programs, and that was because we were targeting things at a local level. Once that money's taken away, well, then we might have the same problems we had prior to the public health money coming over to the council in 2013. So this just adds strength to what Alan Shear's just been saying. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, David. I've got Jenny wants to come in as well. Jenny.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just to highlight that the detail of the response on suicide is highlighted at paragraph 71 to 73 in the detailed report, which is at page 72 in the 74 in the pack of papers, and highlight that I absolutely appreciate the concerns members are expressing in the current climate, but just at this stage, our analysis from our public health intelligence team who do the suicide monitoring for the county is that the rates have not escalated overall in the pandemic, although I acknowledge that, you know, the recent increase, but the long-term view is that we're not yet seeing that in the data. That doesn't mean there aren't concerns, that doesn't mean there's not a lot of work to be done, but overall it's an assurance that at this stage in the data we're not seeing a concern over and above the pre-pandemic period, Chair.
think it may be something we need to keep an eye on, because I know there have been concerns about a lag in the data along those issues. But it's a point that Alan's made well, and it will be one that we follow through, Alan. So thanks for your comments. Eddie, Adam?
Thanks, Chair. It was just quickly just to come back in response to David's question and Amanda's reference to carbon neutral as well. David referred to obviously the wardens. So my committee obviously looks at and reviewing that particular area of work. I'm sure Jenny will pick that up and obviously raise that point, which will eventually come through. But just from my perspective, that we did have the wardens who were on lockdown, who were actually operating from home at a period of time. But also I'm led to believe that they were also instructed that if they were going to make any contact with any residents, they would only do it if safe to do so. So they then had to make that judgment as individuals when they actually approached the particular residents or that particular situation to make that decision. But clearly, Chair, we will get some further information on that for David. As far as Amanda's question about carbon neutral and the carbon neutral strategy, clearly the council do have a strategy, but also they have the carbon management plan, but also the climate emergency response plan, and that is due to come to the environment overview and scrutiny on the 19th of March. So that may be a time when that question can be explored in more detail, Chair.
Thanks for that, Eddie. I take that as a comment rather than a question. Finally, up to now, we have Heather Smith. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you. I'm Heather Smith. I'm the member for Evenwood and I chair the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee. Just in response to John Robinson's comments, mental health of young people and the increase in child poverty are two of the huge issues that our committee has been looking at. And in fact, our last strategy meeting, almost the entire agenda was about those two issues. So it is something that we're looking at, and there is a very active child poverty working group in the council trying to alleviate some of these problems, but they are big. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I have no members indicating that they wish to speak, so we come to the end of that agenda item. Are we happy to accept the recommendation as set out in the report?
Move it, Chair.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thanks, members. That takes us to item 8, which is the Resources Q2 June 2020 forecast of revenue and capital outturn 2021. We have Ian Herbison to present the report. Over to you, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Ian Herbison. I'm the Finance Manager for Resources and Regeneration. Just before I start, would like to say that I believe the modern apprentice who was successful after 10 weeks works in my team, and we do have a really a good record of working with our apprentices who get really good training through the apprenticeship levy. And two of our other young apprentices who started with us last year also secured 2 temporary jobs as part of that recruitment. Clearly those modern apprentices help with the production of the report that is in front of you today, and I just would like to say that it's still been a challenging time because of COVID. The workload has seen some challenges for the finance teams, but we're still being able to do all of the reporting on the budgetary control as planned. So the revenue, it's forecast an underspend of 374,000 against a revised budget of 25.539 million. The capital programme now has a revised budget of 5.797 million, and a spend to August was 1.527 million against a profile budget of 1.785 million. So the actual spend was just a little bit below what we would have expected at this point in the year. The COVID additional costs and lost income continue to be an issue, and in the resources service group and arriving at the outturn cash limit position, we've excluded 4.3 million of COVID related additional costs and lost income, which has been partially offset by 606,000 of COVID related savings. And what I mean by excluded from the cash limit is we obviously record those costs, but because those costs are getting funded corporately and offset by the government funding as far as that is possible, that's why we're saying they're being excluded. So they are included, but they've been taken out because they're being funded corporately. And if members would like to see more detail, that's included in the background papers, and the report that went to Cabinet on the 18th of November 2020 has a lot more detail in the COVID response. We are still at this stage expecting that our current net costs and pressures related to COVID will exceed the grant that has been made available, but we will be looking very closely at that at Q3 when we bring the figures back to the committee. The tables under paragraph 10 provide a detailed breakdown of the cash limit forecast position by the nature and type of expenditure, and also by the head of service. And what you'll find in the paragraph, or the table in paragraph 11, is a brief commentary on the variances against the revised budget, broken down by each individual head of service. And we do provide more detail in paragraphs 14 and 15, which sort of gives members more detail around the types of the more significant COVID pressures and where those related savings have been made. And the capital expenditure is detailed scheme by scheme in Appendix 2. I'll be happy to take any questions on anything in the content of the report, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Ian. We've got Amanda Hopgood.
Yeah.
Wish to speak, Amanda.
Thanks, Chair. It's quite general, and you can probably answer it in one word. There are some significant differences in the figures, either underachieved or overachieved, etc. Is there anything in there that we need to know about that's not COVID related? So is there anything that's come up during the year that wasn't as a direct result of COVID that we just hadn't planned for?
That's a good question. Hopefully they'll be picked up, and there's nothing springs to mind at this stage. This report is considered, if when you say this is significant variances, we do meet as in finance in resources to review, and what you would find, for a good example, is in digital and customer services, where they are overspend, and that's a result of they've been able to do some direct revenue funding of capital programme. So the budgets are looked at in its entirety. So certain managers will be allowed to overspend because they're known they've been offset by underspends in other areas. So there's nothing significant that I'm aware of, because we do review each budget proposal with the heads of service. So there's nothing coming out that's a surprise, other than the COVID related expenditure that I can think of off the top of my head, Chair.
Does that answer your question, Amanda?
It does, yeah, because I mean, just for example, revenues and benefits, 352,000 in additional income is probably not what we would expect this year. We would expect that to be a little bit down.
Absolutely. One of the in financial and transactional services, one of the areas that we have been particularly successful this year is around payroll employee services. Have secured some funding through the SLAs that they generate by working closely with procurement and the schools to protect the services that we're trying to really work together to try and have a better offer through the SLA. And I know certain areas within finance and transactional services have been pretty good at securing that additional income.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. I have nobody else indicating that they wish to speak, so we'll go to the recommendation, which is that the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Management Board is recommended to note the forecast of outturn position. Are we happy to do that, members?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us to item 10, notice of key decisions. Over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Chair. The report's at page 145 in your packs. The schedule attached covers those decisions that are scheduled to be considered by Cabinet from the 16th of December 2020. New to the plan this time is the final budget report and also the County Durham Plan, Minerals and Waste Development Plan document, and Parking and Accessibility Supplementary Planning document. Chair, also to note that the January MTFP 11 report on the schedule has now dropped off in the most recently published notice of key decisions published since these papers went out due to the lateness of the settlement. Chair, the report is for members to note.
Thank you, Jenny. Eddie, you want to raise a point?
Yes, Chair. A question to Jenny, really, from my committee's perspective. I'm not sure whether this is appropriate or not, but I'm sure Jenny will tell me. In terms of County Durham Plan, the Minerals Waste Development Plan identifies that it goes to economy and enterprise. Because it's dealing with minerals and parking, etc., shouldn't that also come to the to my committee for consideration also?
Jenny?
Thanks, Chair. I'll take the point away, Eddie. My thinking is that we've got it linked into economy because they've been doing the overall scrutiny work on the County Durham Plan. However, it may be that we could invite members of Environment to join that discussion.
Okay, Eddie.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Richard Bell first.
Thanks, Chair. Jenny, just the provisional financial settlement, did you say we haven't got that yet from government? And then I see it's going to the January cabinet meeting. Can you remind us of the date of the scrutiny meeting that we will be looking at that, please?
Through you, Chair. The scrutiny sessions were built in to follow on from the cabinet discussions. So because there's no longer a report going to the January cabinet meeting due to the lateness of the settlement, that means we won't be able to then consider that at the January Scrutiny Committee. So we'll be considering the MTFP as our next session at our February scrutiny meeting.
Which is very late, isn't it? Obviously, I mean, that's, yeah, disappointing.
It's unfortunate, Richard, but it does seem to be typical lately where we do get settlements, you know, it seems to get later every year. It's unfortunate, but we have to work within that time frame. Amanda?
Thanks, Chair. This report continues to frustrate me by what's missing from it, and things disappear and then don't come back. We're in the process of doing a consultation on a huge spend on leisure services and updating sports centres, building new ones, and it's gone. It should still be on there so we know what the work programme is. I just find it frustrating, and then we get told, well, you should have asked questions about it. And I will repeat what I've said many times, you can't ask about something you're not aware of. So we do know that there's a consultation on that at the moment, but it's gone off here again. But we don't know what we don't know if we're not told the information in the first place. So this very much looks as if children and young people and adult and health and neighbourhoods and climate have no major projects, which I find impossible to believe, and nothing that's coming up in the near future. So thanks, Chair.
Is there anything on that, Jenny?
I'll just come back, Chair, to say that the purpose of this report is it's the publication of the statutory notice of key decisions, and I think we've had sort of feedback from Dem Service previously on the basis of what's included. So it is that statutory basis and that forward look and the requirement to publish those decisions Cabinet are going to make, and that's the point on which the content is based. However, I'll take Councillor Hopgood's comments back with regard to the leisure aspect.
Thanks for that, Jenny. I have nobody else indicating that they wish to speak, so are we happy to accept the recommendation, which is to note the update report on the notice of key decisions?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to item 11. We don't have any other business, and I haven't been informed of any other business, and that concludes the meeting. Dem services are about to mute the microphones, but I'd be grateful, please, if you would remain seated until the broadcast is closed. Thank you.